Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And welcome to a very special edition of the Green Flag here today. It's our mid-season silly season predictions for the NASCAR Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series here for 2022. We did our preseason ones before the season started this year, and we're basically starting from scratch in this one because a lot of news has broke over the past month or so with some big names potentially on the move with the rumors and everything that is basically almost confirmed for some of these guys. And we're going to readjust our approach for this, and we're going to give you our best case scenarios in terms of predictions. We're going to be entirely wrong, but it is a fun video to make for you guys. And I can't wait to get going here. But first off, how you doing today, Kyle?
Oh, I'm doing great. I love this episode so much. When we did it in the preseason, it was great. When we did it last year, despite how miraculously and incredibly wrong we were, was so much fun to do. And what you went like 0 for like got 1 right. Like I got like 3 combined from all the picks we did across all the series. So last year, the shooting percentage was not so high. This year, I'm feeling at least better about a few things, but we'll see how everything plays out. I'm looking forward to this one.
I'm going to get Brad Keselowski right. I know that. But beyond that,
unless there's a curveball, I don't know.
I'm skeptical, honestly. I don't know what to expect in this one. But we'll have our kind of preview for the All-Star race later on this week. So make sure you come back to the channel and check that one out. But today is entirely about the silly season predictions. So let's not waste any time. We'll get underway here with the probably most predictable organization that there is, or the top 2 predictable organizations that there is, Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing. Hendrick Motorsports, it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, everybody is signed to a contract extension except for Alex Bowman at this current moment, but we're in all anticipation that Alex Bowman will receive that contract extension to drive the 48 car next season. So no need to worry over there for Alex Bowman fans or Hendrick Motorsports fans. I think that foursome has done enough on the track so far to start this season that they deserve a second shot again next season with the next gen car. So that's a big caveat as well. We got a next gen car coming in as well, potential new teams on the rise because of the funding that it takes to run a car for next season. It's more economically friendly for these teams to come in. So that's a huge thing as we get along into this silly season predictions thing. But for yourself, Kyle, Hendrick Motorsports staying the same?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for them to change anything up. You look at the 3-headed monster, at least right now, of Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and the consistency of William Byron there. They're all still under contract, so no worries about anything like that. And with the 48, you've got full sponsorship from Ally still. They like Alex Bowman. He's got 2 wins this season, and he looks to be somebody that heats up when it comes to playoff time when you look at his performance last year. So no reason not to bring Alex Bowman back. He's also a cheaper guy when you look at what his contract would be versus bringing in somebody else from the open market versus some of the other guys that they have there, because they do have some big extensions coming up in Chase Elliott and William Byron in a year or two's time. So for right now, just makes sense to keep Alex Bowman in that car. He's won a couple races, can make the playoffs, can be a contender in those playoffs. No reason to make a change there.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to Joe Gibbs Racing. Basically, everybody here is signed as well into 2022.
Yeah, they got their business done early.
Yeah, they did. In my preseason part of the predictions, I made the bold one that I thought Denny Hamlin may drive for his own team in 2022, and they quickly snuffed that possibility as literally a couple of days after we recorded that episode, he signs a contract extension along with FedEx to drive the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing for a couple more seasons. So that was the only big name really up in the air. Trucks didn't have a contract extension. He now has one. So all 4 of the JGR of quartet is signed into next season. Kyle Busch staying in the 18 car. He's got a contract coming up, I believe, next season. So he's going to have to renegotiate if he wants to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing beyond 2022. Christopher Bell just got there. He signed through next season. So there's no issue around that 20 car this season. There's nobody coming up through the ranks that's going to be able to question what Christopher Bell has done behind the wheel this season. So JGR basically locked and loaded.
Yeah, we know the lineup already. We got contract extensions from Hamlin and Truex basically before the season even started. Kyle Busch is still signed, and Christopher Bell has been the Toyota pipeline number 1 prospect for years and years. 1 season at JGR, he's still signed past the season, so no reason to change anything at JGR either.
Let's move into our first change, because this is basically, it seems that way. It's not been officially announced or anything, but Team Penske They have the possibility of Brad Keselowski leaving the team after signing a one-year contract last season. I feel like it's deja vu all over again because we had this discussion last season and we kind of thought Brad Keselowski could potentially be on the move somewhere, maybe that 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports because of that previous ties, but those seats are absolutely filled up for next season. So he's had to look elsewhere, and it seems like a very high probability he's going to be driving for Roush Fenway Racing next season as a driver / co-owner of the team. So a big step up in terms of the business side of things for Brad Keselowski, and that leaves a massive spot open near the top of the field. Remember, this is a seat that finished second in the championship last season to Chase Elliott. So this has a lot of potential, and they have obviously a guy in their pipeline named Austin Cindric that could potentially take this spot, but I'll let you lead this one off here, Kyle. What are you thinking for Team Penske for 2022?
Yeah, so we know two of the three drivers. We know Ryan Blaney will be back. We know Joey Logano. What number they potentially run is up in the air, but I do think Penske will make the pivot and have Austin Cindric step into the three-car fold right away. I don't see why, with Brad Keselowski leaving, why you would maybe put Cindric in the 21, still do that short-term thing. I think it's just best to put him right in. We've seen already this season that he's a potential race-winning candidate at super speedways from the Daytona 500 performance and also on road courses from what we saw in the rain at Circuit of the Americas before they had some issues later on in that race. So we know that he's a potential playoff candidate right away. Stepping into that team. I think the bigger question is less of who takes that seat and more what number do they run? Because I do think that it's a legit scenario where we could see Ryan Blaney shift over to the flagship number 2 car for maybe sponsorship reasons or stuff like that. And Cindric steps into the number 12, maybe take some of the pressure off of him right away. But that being said, I'm just going to go with the easy route and have Austin Cindric step into the number 2. We know Tim Cindric is a big player at Penske. Austin Cindric is going to be at that team as long as basically he wants, essentially. So I really don't see any reason why you wouldn't just toss him in the 2 car, keep the 12 the way it is, keep the 22 the way it is, and just bring Cindric right into the fold in that flagship number 2.
Yeah, so for me, I have Austin Cindric as well taking a spot in terms of replacing Brad Keselowski over there for next season. Like Kyle said, it just makes a bit too much sense for them to take him over there right away. I know it was announced last season that he would sign for Wood Brothers and race for Wood Brothers for 2022, but things change. I don't believe they expected Brad Keselowski to probably leave the team this soon or this sudden of a move, and this gives them plenty of time to kind of renegotiate with Wood Brothers because they have him under contract. It's Cindric under contract with Team Penske. He's just kind of being loaned to Wood Brothers, so they can just take off that loan and just take him over at their big camp. And for me, I do see a shift with the driver numbers over there with Joey Logano staying in the 22, but I have Ryan Blaney switching over to the 2 because I think he is probably their most premier driver going forward. Joey Logano is definitely not even hit his prime, most likely, in the Cup Series based off of the average numbers that we've seen in the past being in the late 30s. He's not quite there yet, but Ryan Blaney is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Cup Series for many, many years to come. Like you said, I think it is a little bit too much pressure to put Austin Cindric in the 2 car right away. I had to make sure that there was no kind of logo with Brian Blaney and maybe like a 12 and RB because it could potentially work that way. So I didn't want to made sure that there was like nothing that really tied Blaney to the 12. But I think it makes a lot of sense to put Blaney in the 2 car. They've given him arguably the best crew chief there with Todd Gordon. So might as well just put him over there in the established and historic number 2 car for Team Penske. And then Austin Cindric will drive the 12 car for Penske Racing. So that's the way I see it. I don't quite see them adding a 4th car. I don't think that's realistic for next season. They haven't even kind of got their feet wet with really 3 cars. It feels like a quick turnaround for them to put a 4th car onto that lineup. So I'm going to stick with a trio here that's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Cup Series for many, many years to come.
Yeah, I like that Blaney change. I do wonder what some of the sponsorship stuff is because Blaney is usually Menards / somebody else. So if there's some sponsorship ties to that 2 car, we know Miller Lite in the past, now Keystone, have obviously the history with that number 2 car. Switching Blaney over could help out some of the sponsorship with him, maybe diversify it a little bit, and then have Cindric come in. And we know all the different sponsors that have been on his car, from Verizon to PPG Paints to Moneyline. He's had a bunch of different stuff in Xfinity. So I would imagine there's some sponsorship stuff that they might have to work through, but I do like that Blaney switch over. I just went conservative with it. I wanted to make sure I at least get one potentially right, so I put Cindric in the 2. But I do think it would be a really smart play by Penske just from a marketability side to switch Blaney over to the 2.
Yeah, I think the 2 car, the reason why I wanted to do it as well is the 2 car is traditionally lately not been very funded by sponsors. It's discount tire largely for the entire season. Keystone Light gets now a one race that they had already at the Coca-Cola 600. And that's basically kind of where the sponsorship kind of ends for that 2 car. They have a couple of other sponsors on there throughout the season, but it doesn't go beyond much of that. So I don't think it would be too much of a hassle as maybe it would be if Miller Lite was the premier sponsor. I think Discount Tire has shown their flexibility with willingness to sponsor different cars. So I just went a little bit bold with it. Maybe I'm wrong on it, but at the end of the day, if I get the trio right over there, I'll take that. I don't care what number they're driving at the end of the day, but I think that'll do it for Team Penske.
Yeah.
This is a big one now. SHR, the underperforming organization of the season, if you want to so called that. Kevin Harvick is signed through next season, so he's got signed until the end of 2023, I believe.
Something like that. Yeah, he's got a long extension.
So he's got 2 more years, I believe, in the Cup Series, and then that's probably all we'll see of Kevin Harvick in the NASCAR Cup Series. Then you've got 2 young guns with Cole Custer and Chase Briscoe, 2 guys that have excelled in the Xfinity Series program and have taken a little bit of time to kind of get their feet wet in the Cup Series, namely Cole Custer. This is his 2nd season now. He has a victory, kind of a fluke one if you want to characterize it as that. But then Chase Briscoe in his rookie season, struggling a little bit more than what we all thought he might. But SHR
still technically the number 2 SHR car in the standings.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible to say. But they've got 3 guys pretty much locked in for next season: Briscoe, Custer, and Kevin Harvick. But Eric Almirola is in a contract season this year, and he has had a miserable campaign so far in 2021. It's going to take a win for him to make the playoffs if he gets so lucky with that, if a lightning strike or something like that. It's going to have to come down to massive luck for the 10 car to make the playoffs. And Eric Almirola has been a guy that's been up and down his entire Cup Series career, specifically with SHR. And there's rumors that he could probably be on the way out of there. But I'll let you lead this one off, Kyle. What are you thinking for SHR, a powerhouse potentially for many, many years to come? Do they go young? Do they go old? Experience? What are you thinking here for SHR?
Yeah, Kevin Harvick's not going anywhere. He's got that contract there. Chase Briscoe, Cole Custer, they're both young, cheap guys to build for the future for SHR. But the big question is that number 10 car. Eric Almirola brings in a lot of money with Smithfield, but he's also wrecked a lot of stuff this year, both by his own doing and not. He's had some really bad luck. It's one of the more fascinating cars that could potentially be open for free agents, just given the high end of what Kevin Harvick is. Although you look at the standings right now, the 10, the 14, and the 41 are in and around the 43 20s. From Richard Petty, late 20s in the standings, like barely above the second front row car. So it's been a struggle this year. But I do think that Eric Almirola actually does come back. And the big thing because of that is dollar bills, the money. If Smithfield is coming back, I think Eric Almirola comes back. The big thing there is the fact that SHR does basically self-sponsor that 41 car. We've seen a couple of times recently where they haven't had the Haas tooling or whatever on the 41 of Cole Custer, but it is still primarily Eric or self-sponsored with the Haas tooling for the 41 car, unless somebody else is coming in with a big check as kind of like a paid driver-esque. I think that could be the case, but Eric Almirola, he's been there for a few years. He's succeeded as recently as last year, although we'll point to maybe some of the qualifying draw because of that. But I think they'll rate this year off to bad luck. Smithfield, as long as they come back, I think Almirola will come back. I think that contract will be fairly cheap as well for SHR, which is another big aspect. So I looked around at some other potential drivers that could bring in money, but I didn't see anything that made a ton of sense. So I think Eric Almirola does come back at least for one more season in that number 10 car.
Damn. I mean,
you're struggling with this one.
Yeah, this was the one I had the most trouble with because you're not going to look to Riley Herbst to come up there and take that spot, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to do that. I do feel like they may need to try and shift things up. They need to try and switch a couple of things up.
I would agree.
Like, it's not working with Eric Almirola. He's, in my opinion, he fluked into having a good point situation last year with the qualifying draw. Like, he was absolutely the luckiest man with that, getting top 4 starting positions basically every single week. So I have him moving on.
Okay.
I am not happy with the replacement that I have put in this seat.
Okay.
And I had to move a couple of things around kind of before the show started to make this one guy get a seat. And I'm not too happy about what I've got, really. I was really struggling with this one, if you can tell. I'm going with Matt DiBenedetto to take over the 10 car.
Okay.
I think
really?
I think he's deserving of a step up in performance. After his slow start to this season, he's worked his way back up to 17th in points. I don't like this move at all. I don't think this is going to happen. But in order to make this other move that I wanted to make happen, I had to switch some things around, and I didn't. I prefer this move just for maybe the clicks. I don't know, but for the maybe just the bull,
spice it up a little bit.
I will say, I really do think he actually is going to return to Wood Brothers next season. I think that makes a lot of sense for him, just based off of the news that we heard this week that they're changing crew chiefs. I don't know if they would make that decision if he was going to be moving on. I think they're trying to maybe build something there with Matt DiBenedetto for the long-term future. From that kind of statement that Greg Irwin has moved on from the crew chiefing position for Matt DiBenedetto. So I think that's a positive sign for me, at least, that they're looking to give Matt DiBenedetto something for the future. But for SHR, they need a guy that has a little bit of experience. He's definitely going to be your second driver there next season. He's not going to go out there and outclass Kevin Harvick. And he's a guy that doesn't bring in much sponsorship dollars, which is a bit unfortunate in this situation. But he's a proven guy that I think could definitely do something in that seat, gives him a better shot to win. Penske does have an option. It's rumored that that Penske has an option to pick him up for 2022. How they want to do that, you decide. I think Wood Brothers is probably where he ends up at the end of the day. But for this move that I wanted to make a little later on, I've gone with Matt DiBenedetto taking over the 10.
I love the move. It was what I had in my preseason. Just looking at the situation, I think money is going to be the big deciding factor rather than driver talent or who's available. I do think that making a move for somebody like DiBenedetto would be fantastic for Stewart-Haas. Just gets somebody else in there, an experienced driver who also has shown the ability to be a playoff driver. I just think Almirola kind of ticks a few of those boxes while also bringing in a big paycheck for Stewart-Haas Racing. And I think at the end of the day, that's going to be the deciding factor.
Fair enough. We go to another open spot potentially here, Kyle. Chip Ganassi Racing, a 2-car organization. Ross Chastain is signed through next season, so you don't have to worry about him returning to the team. He will be in that 42 car. But the 1 car is most likely vacant because it seems that Kurt Busch, through all the press and stuff that he's done, he says he hasn't had any contract negotiations, but articles and well-established people in the media have said that it's very likely that he moves on from Chip Ganassi Racing to a team that we'll talk about a little bit later on. So that potentially leaves the 1 car up for debate. I'll go first with this one because you went first for the last 2. So I've got Ross Chastain in the 42 car. In the 1 car, I see a guy from the Xfinity Series coming up and taking this spot. I don't quite think that they will go with a veteran guy for this spot. I don't know if it makes a bunch of sense for them. I think they're trying to build something there at Chip Ganassi for the future. This guy's had a tough start to the 2021 season. Before this, he's been very highly touted, made his way up through the rankings in very high-profile equipment. I'm not sure if he's quite ready to graduate, but I think Chip Ganassi likes winners. And Noah Gragson takes this spot for me in the 1 car. He's aligned with Chevrolet. And for Junior Motorsports and that kind of alliance there with Hendrick, there's no vacancy over there for him for the foreseeable future. I think he's going to have to look elsewhere in the Chevy camp if he wants to stay with them in order to get to the Cup Series. I see Chip Ganassi Racing as being a very good outlet for a team that needs a young guy, younger than Ross Chastain because he's well into his 20s. Gragson has the potential to do something. He could even still win the championship in the Xfinity Series despite having horrible luck to start this season. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's not the greatest media guy, I would say, but he gets a lot of clicks, and he brings in a couple of sponsors with him as well. I see Noah Gragson as a very nice fit over there for Chip Ganassi Racing, and a one car that is historically just sponsored by Monster. They could potentially move on with Kurt Busch, who knows? But I do have him leaving the team and Noah Gragson coming in there to replace him.
Yeah, I think that's a solid fit. So in the 42, I also have Ross Chastain returning. Chip Ganassi holds a team option on Chastain. I don't see why they wouldn't go ahead and go through with that option. Chastain's been solid. We've seen some highlights from him. He's not that far off from where Kurt Busch has been this season in the standings either. So overall, I think it's been a solid season for Chastain in that 42. It's really stabilized that team after the chaos that was last year and Matt Kenseth's kind of underperformance as well. The one car is fascinating though, because Kurt Busch is one of those kind of perfect drivers, honestly, where he brings in a big paycheck with all the Monster Energy and even gear wrench stuff. And he's also a really damn solid driver. We've seen him win one race each season with Chip Ganassi Racing. We saw him do very solid with Stewart-Haas previous to that. So I do think that that's going to be a big, big hole to fill for Chip Ganassi Racing, particularly on the sponsorship side of things. So for Chip Ganassi Racing last year, it's funny you mentioned the they like winners thing, because last year they grabbed the guy in Ross Chastain who hadn't won any races in the Xfinity series that season, but was very consistent, finished in the top 10 a lot, was up in the championship conversation because of that. He gets the seat and he's performed fairly well. I know you're not going to like this one very much.
Oh, no, you're not.
But going to the one car with full sponsorship from Poppy Bank, I'm going to say Daniel Hemrick goes into that one car.
Oh, no.
He's consistent. He brings sponsorship and he's a cheap driver. And I think that trio will be solid for Chip Ganassi Racing going into next season. They'll save the money from the Kurt Busch contract, but they need to make up the sponsorship elsewhere. I do like the Gragson pull. I think he could potentially be an option, but I'm not sure how much I love that fit right away for Gragson. So for Daniel Hemrick, the consistency's there. I'm not sure about where he ends up next season. I thought about a couple different other landing spots, but when I look at what Chip Ganassi Racing needs in a driver, I do think he kind of fits a similar mold to what Ross Chastain did last year. So Daniel Hemrick steps into that number one car.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good bet. Like, I think it's interesting. I didn't look at him for that seat whatsoever.
That's one of the ones that I thought you weren't going to like very much
because I don't think he's good enough to be in that one car. I just don't. He hasn't won anything. And I just think Chip Ganassi's motto of, I love winners is absolutely going against it if you pick Daniel Hemrick. But
I mean, you can apply a lot of those things to Ross Chastain last year. I know he won one Xfinity race with Chip Ganassi, but I look at the season that Chastain had last year. Obviously, you would hope Hemrick gets that first win at some point this season with Joe Gibbs. But I do think that they're somewhat comparable drivers. And when you look at that rookie season that Hemrick had in the Cup Series as well, yes, it wasn't very good, but it also wasn't that far off from Austin Dillon in that same equipment. And we've seen Richard Childress really step up their game the last couple of seasons. And all of a sudden, Austin Dillon is a consistent driver that is currently going to point his way into the playoffs unless something drastic happens over these next few weeks. So I do like Hemrick a little bit more than you. He's consistent. He brings that sponsorship. I think that he could be a fit for Chip Ganassi Racing.
All righty. Fair enough.
Where are we going next?
We move on to a guy you just mentioned, Austin Dillon's team, Richard Childress Racing. This is a team, two-car organization. I personally don't have them changing anything for next season. I don't think it makes sense. Austin Dillon is in a contract year, but he's Richard Childress' grandson, and I don't quite see him moving anywhere else. He's had success there. And I think Richard Childress would love to have him back for probably the rest of his Cup Series career if they could sign that long of a contract. And then Tyler Reddick, been sensational for them at times, struggling to find the consistency a little bit, but he's starting to improve on that this season. He's in the points, well into the points, 13th overall in the regular season standings. So he's shown massive steps in his slow time in the Cup Series, his second season here. They've got a really solid lineup there for just having a 2-car organization. You got experience with Austin Dillon, who has proven himself in the lower series, as well as Tyler Reddick, a proven guy in the lower series. That is probably on the verge of a win within the next couple of seasons, I would say, if the circumstances go his way. Homestead obviously is a place that he's going to be able to break through probably at least once in his career. But for yourself, Kyle, what do you have for Richard Childress Racing in 2022?
Yep, I've got no changes as well. Austin Dillon, he's going to be at that team as long as they want him there, which seems like it's going to be forever. And in the 8-car for Tyler Reddick, Richard Childress holds a team option, and they got to be out of their mind to look elsewhere. Tyler Reddick is a great prospect coming up. Yeah, it's fantastic that they've even been able to get a prospect of his caliber into that team and keep him there. He's somebody that I thought could have gone to a Hendrick Motorsports in that 48 last year. He was the prediction that I had last year. Two-time Xfinity Series champion. He's been great. He was the top overall rookie if you look at points last season, if you exclude the win that technically got Cole Custer the award, even though he was like the worst in terms of overall points of the big three, excluding John Hunter Nemechek there. And when you look at his performance this year, after a bit of a shaky start, he's now not that far off from Austin Dillon in the points either. So big fan of Tyler Reddick. Don't see them making any changes at that team. For sure.
Let's roll along to Wood Brothers Racing. The 21 car, historic 21 car. I have Matt DiBenedetto moving on. I don't know what you got
with this one. I'll start with this one because it's pretty straightforward. Team Penske holds an option on Matt DiBenedetto. I think they will pick up that option and keep him at Wood Brothers. They had a slow start this season. I haven't been a big fan of Greg Irwin as a crew chief. I'm excited to see what the change to Jonathan Hassler does to that team. Hopefully on the road courses specifically as well, because that's an area that team has really struggled, and we've seen DiBenedetto be strong at road courses previous to that in his career. So I'm not sure what's going on there. They've also missed setups at tracks that DiBenedetto has been really strong at, like a Bristol. So I like the change there. I'm excited to see what that does the rest of the season. I don't know if they make the playoffs this year, just given the circumstances. They might have to get a win or really, really do well the rest of the season to maybe point their way in. But I do think he returns to that team. I just think it's a great fit for both of them. When you look at Wood Brothers, where they are, when you look at Matt DiBenedetto, where he is, I just think that that's a perfect blend of where a team is at and where a driver is at. When you look at the marketability of DiBenedetto with that team, everything like that, I feel like it's such a great fit. I would have been really heartbroken if that didn't continue with Austin Cindric stepping into that car this season as originally planned. I'm glad to see Brad Keselowski go elsewhere because it opens up the possibility of DiBenedetto returning. And so for that reason, I've got Wood Brothers staying the same.
Can I skip this one for me? Because I don't like what I've got.
No, you got to do it.
This is terrible.
Who do you got?
It's the guy that I did not know where to put, Ryan Preece. I did not know where to put him.
Man.
But I will say,
talk about shoehorning a guy. Man.
Wood Brothers does like to go for guys that, traditionally I think have potential, right? They're in an underperforming car, and they like guys that could potentially go out there and win. Ryan Preece, I think he's probably on the way out because of the 37 car situation that we're seeing develop. They're not running the Open this weekend for the All-Star race. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense for Preece to stay at that organization. So I could not find a place for him in any other series, any other organization that I felt comfortable with him in, because I like what I have for the rest of it beyond the Matt DiBenedetto and Ryan Preece situation. Those are the two I really struggle with. But everything else, I like what I've got going on. I looked at a couple of situations, but I didn't quite think it made a lot of sense. So I'm fully expecting this to be wrong. And
dude, if you hit on that one, bravo. But
it will be wrong. I think, honestly, do think that you're going to be right with the Matt DiBenedetto thing. I just wanted to try Eric Elmore with a different situation.
Spice it up. I like it.
But I don't really have any rationale beyond the Wood Brothers looking at other guys that have underperformed or haven't quite had that opportunity. But I'm going with Ryan Preece at the Wood Brothers 21.
Oh man, okay.
Brutal, absolutely brutal.
Okay, let's pick it up again. Yeah,
let's move on. Roush Fenway Racing, the big one,
as they're currently called.
Yeah, we could see Keselowski's name make his way in there. We both have him moving on from Team Penske. This is his likely destination. So I'll go first for this one because you went first for the last one. It's fairly straightforward.
Make yourself feel a little bit better after that Ryan Preece one.
Yeah, I've got Brad Keselowski going to the number 6 car, if you can believe it. I think that it makes a lot of sense for him to come in there. replace Ryan Newman, and then Chris Buescher has signed a contract extension along with Fastenal to stay with Roush Fenway Racing for the foreseeable future until 2024. So he's not going anywhere. That's a really solid two-car lineup. I don't quite see them expanding to a third car. I don't think the charters are there for them to do that when I look at some other people that are looking at getting charters for another spot. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher there in 2022.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Chris Buescher. I have been for a very long time. And I think we're going to see some of that performance start to come. We've seen some of the glimpses this season, the consistency this season, getting that car back into the playoffs. Yep. I'm excited to see what comes in the future with Brad Keselowski coming into that team. It's as confirmed as something can be without actually being confirmed. So I do have Keselowski in the 6 car as well. And I also have a name change there. It's going to be Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, or just shortened to RFK Racing from here on out. I don't think he makes the changeover. We know the ownership stuff. I think his name will be a part of the team just for that sake as well. I don't have them expanding to a full-time third car, but I do think that they will have a third entry for Ryan Newman at the Daytona 500 and potentially some other tracks. But that's what I'm going with. So Keselowski full-time in the 6. Chris Buescher full-time in the 17, of course. I don't see Ryan Newman going anywhere else. I just don't think he brings enough to the table for somebody else to pay what it's going to take to get Ryan Newman when you look at his performance recently. So Ryan Newman, I'll say, stays at Roush Fenway, Keselowski Racing, in a third car that runs Daytona 500, maybe all the plate tracks, maybe a couple other things that Newman likes, but kind of similar. Not to a full extent, but kind of similar to what Jamie McMurray's done, where he's run the 500 for like Spire with Chip Ganassi relationship kind of thing. And I'll say that happens in the number 26 car as well. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I've got Ryan Newman elsewhere, but we'll leave that for a little bit later on. So yeah, I don't know if Keselowski for me is going to be quite, petty enough to put his own name in there while he's still driving. I think maybe once he's retired, they might rebrand it to Keselowski in there, but I don't know. I think Roush Fenway I don't know if he wants to mesh with that brand at all. But you never know.
I mean, Fenway messed with the brand when they bought in, so.
But that's just what I've grown up with. Roush Fenway Racing is like the standard. I don't know if everybody's ready for Keselowski's name to be in as the third name in that. It sounds like a law firm at this point, Roush Fenway Racing or Roush Fenway Keselowski.
Let's see. So what year did they switch over, or when did the Fenway buy into the team here? I don't know if I can find it somewhere, but
it's got to be in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, somewhere around that. You can continue on. I'll see if I can find it.
Okay. On to the next one. 2311 Racing. Something that we did not see coming
not at all
last year, but it has sparked a whole bunch of intrigue in terms of adding a second car for next season. Bubba Wallace staying in that 23 car. That's pretty obvious, but what do you have for the second car? I mean, it's pretty much widely rumored where he's going, but what are you thinking for the second entry for 2311?
Yeah, so for starters, Roush Fenway became the name of the team in 2007 when Fenway Sports bought in for 50%. So that's what it was there. For 2311 Racing, well, for starters, I'm glad we know that they're a thing this year.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Because last year it was quite the curveball. So obviously Bubba Wallace is returning to the 23. You're dumb if you don't think that's going to happen, or racist. In the second car, I think the bigger question is whether they have a charter or not, because Kurt Busch has been speculated or reported to be their number one target for that second car. We both got him moving on from Chip Ganassi Racing, and I think it's just a perfect fit for everybody involved there. Kurt Busch goes to a team that has higher potential than Chip Ganassi Racing. He gets to go to Toyota, be pseudo teammates with his brother as well at the end of his career, which I'm sure is a big factor for him as well.
Love it.
So I think the bigger question isn't who's going to take that seat, and rather, do they have a charter? For starters, I think it's going to be the number 45. If it isn't, I'm going to be extremely disappointed.
There's a couple of options I would say for that number, but yeah.
Okay. I hope it's the 45.
I have 45 as well, but yeah.
Okay, good. I do think
81 was the other number I was looking at, but
okay. I do think that they will acquire a charter for this one. And I'm going to say that they get the number 51 charter from Pettyware Racing. Currently, the number 51 is in a very unique situation, which we haven't seen so far in NASCAR, where if they finish bottom three in owner points this season, NASCAR will have the option to rescind that charter, because that will be the third consecutive season that they have finished with that charter in the bottom three. They just moved back into the bottom three this past weekend. I don't know what's going to happen with that charter and whether NASCAR will have that option or anything like that, but with something that comes down the pipeline as well when we get to a different team, I do think that their influence on this charter will impact where it ends up going. I do think that Rick Ware and the partner for that charter, Richard Petty, will sell that charter come the end of the season, or one of those Rick Ware charters will end up being sold. And I do believe that 2311 will end up being the recipient of that for that number 45 car.
Yeah, I mean, they have the means, right? They've got a bunch of backing. So I think
if they want the charter, they'll be able to get it.
Yeah, they're probably the favorites in my mind of any team that's looking to expand. They're going to be able to purchase that charter based off of the funding that they have. So for me, I have Bubba Wallace obviously returning, Kurt Busch in the 45 car for 2311. I would be ecstatic if this happens. I was so close to saying the 81 because of Michael Jordan's obviously 81 point game, but also the invert of Kyle Busch's number.
That's good.
I thought would be absolutely awesome if they would do that. Credit to them if they do, because that would be just, I would be over the moon. I'd buy merchandise the second it would be announced. But for Kurt Busch, over this weekend, I have the NASCAR app, and I listen to the scanner on the weekends, and I listen to Kyle Busch's radio. And every single time throughout the race, it was very frequent. He kept on saying anything for Kurt. So I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But there is some sort of tie, I'm thinking, there with Kurt Busch in that kind of message there. They were around each other throughout the race on Sunday at Sonoma, but I think there is a little bit more meaning to that. I think if anybody's going to know anything, it's going to be Kyle Busch on Kurt Busch's situation. So I think it's a bit of an interesting situation there, but Kurt Busch makes a lot of sense. It's a perfect fit over there. Denny Hamlin and him have not had any really going togethers over the years in terms of rivalries or anything.
One of the few.
Yeah, it's true. But Kurt Busch is an established driver. I don't think he's ready to retire yet. He's tweeted out the "I'm not effing leaving" thing from the Wolf of Wall Street. Whether that's, Chip Ganassi Racing or the sport entirely, you can decide on that. But Kurt Busch is a perfect fit over there. It's what they absolutely need to mentor somebody like Bubba Wallace. And he's going to get you the consistent results. He's one of the guys that tested the next gen car a lot. So he's going to give you a lot of positive feedback and is going to help improve that team, not only for the short term, but for the long term as well. And that decision really kind of helped me make another move here for another guy that I could see potentially taking that spot in a couple of years' time, potentially. But I'm going with Kurt Busch to take that 45
and
car.
Charter or no charter?
I'm going with charter. I also have it for the 51 from the Petty and Ware kind of reliance there with that one. So it made a lot of sense for me on that one. That car sucks. So let's, give it to somebody that can actually use it. And Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin are going to be pretty, out there to try and get that charter. They're going to be very motivated, and I don't see that anybody stopping them from getting at least one of those charters from one of the Rick Ware teams or anybody that's looking to sell something for next season. So that is another one out of the way. We move on to Trackhouse Racing team, a team that we also didn't know when we did this last season that was going to be in the Cup Series this season. And as soon as we were about to record this, of course, they released the kind of information that they are really looking to expand to a two-car organization for 2022. So that is kind of why my stuff is a little bit jumbled up with Matt DiBenedetto and Ryan Preece, because I've added a second Trackhouse car here. But who do you want to lead this one off, Kyle? You can make the decision.
Yeah, I'll lead it off. Well, for starters, in the 99 is going to be Daniel Suarez. We know the story about Pitbull's involvement with the team, somewhat being associated with Daniel Suarez being the driver at that team. Of course, Daniel Suarez, one of the few foreign drivers that we have currently in NASCAR. It's like him and James Davison are like the only two that we ever see. You look at Pitbull's involvement with the team associated with that. Daniel Suarez isn't going anywhere, and he's had a fantastic season. we heard earlier today, and literally like 15 minutes before we were set to record, that Justin Marks is or kind of openly looking at a second car going into next season, which is pretty interesting. I didn't think that they would maybe rapidly expand like somebody else, like a 2311 would. Yeah. But we've seen them bring a lot of sponsors on board. We've seen the success of the team early on. So it does make a lot of sense for this team. For the sake of just numbers, I'm just going to go with the 98. Just keep it nice and simple there. Mm-hmm. Just back-to-back numbers. You like it classy like that. Of course. And in this seat, I have Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Whoa.
Which I'm sure surprises you a little bit, but we'll get to something else a little bit down the road when we get to JTG. But for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I think that Trackhouse is a step up in equipment when you look at Stenhouse has been better than Trackhouse this season, but you'll look at Ryan Preece with JTG, and they've been a decent bit off of what Trackhouse has done. I like Daniel Suarez at that team. The big thing for me is kind of the driver that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is. I think that some of his qualities would suit well to that team when you look at some of the strategy plays that himself and Brian Patty try. They're associated with Richard Childress Racing. So I like the fit overall there. And I think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could be a very solid fit over there for Trackhouse. So I've got him going to the 98.
Charter or no charter?
I've got a charter, but I have to wait on where the charter comes from.
After I go?
After we get to the team that it's coming from.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So for me, and I've got them expanding as well. I have Daniel Suarez staying obviously in the 99. They are on lease with a charter from Spire right now. So I'm going to say that they fully purchased that one from Spire for next season.
Okay.
And then the second spot, this is one that I like a lot. I don't think, maybe it's not realistic, but I like this fit.
Okay.
It's Ryan Newman. And
really? Okay.
It's because he brings in a lot of sponsorship dollars. And of course, after his accident in the 2020 Daytona 500, he's gained a lot of traction online, and everybody's kind of seen the wreck, obviously. And he's gotten a lot of sponsorship that he's going to be able to bring with him beyond his days at Roush Fenway Racing. And from all his comments, he doesn't want to leave just yet. And he's the kind of guy that can be a good mentor, just like Kurt Busch is to Bubba Wallace. I think he could do that for Daniel Suarez. Both of them are Coca-Cola Racing drivers as well, so that's a huge added bonus.
Good point.
I have the number being the 39, so I think they're going to go with the 99, 39, Ryan Newman's old number with Stewart-Haas Racing. And I just think the fit makes a bunch of sense for me personally. He stays with a Chevrolet camp that he's gone with in the past. So he's basically gone with every manufacturer there is except for Toyota in the Cup Series. But I think he's a guy that could be on the move, fits the mold, I think, over there at what Trackhouse is trying to do. And he's just kind of a stopgap kind of guy to get that second car established. And then they look elsewhere for younger talent, probably to fill that seat in 1 or 2 years' time after he said, yep, this is probably it for me. And he'll probably hang it up for Ryan Newman. So I have that car in the 39 for Ryan Newman.
I do like that one. I just don't see anyone maybe going for a full-time ride for Ryan Newman into next year, but you do bring up some of the sponsorship stuff. A veteran driver stepping into a new seat to help stabilize a team does make a lot of sense potentially for Trackhouse if that is an option for Ryan Newman.
Yeah, until the second car wasn't announced before the show, I had Ryan Newman going back to SHR in the 10 car. And I had Matt DiBenedetto staying in the 21 kind of thing, but I had to move some things around, and I thought Newman would be a nice asset here for Trackhouse for next season.
I would have probably stuck with that instead of Ryan Preece at the 21 maybe, and maybe stuck like Preece in that second Trackhouse seat. But hey, you know what? You do you.
I don't know what I'm doing anymore. There's no point in, not being bold. Yeah. So that does it for Trackhouse, I guess. And then Front Row Motorsports, the Daytona 500 champion organization here. Mike McDowell is, I believe, in a contract year, but he's been very open in saying that he wants to return to the team. I was potentially looking at, okay, if he's going to capitalize kind of like what Bubba Wallace did last year, this is the time to cash in and try and maybe move up the rankings. I just think there's too much talent elsewhere that could really rival Michael McDowell for a seat that he's going to try and get. So I have him returning to the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports. Then the second car in the 38 one, Anthony Alfredo's on a 1-year contract. He's having a pretty poor season in the 38 car, but I'll cut him some slack. It's his rookie season. I'm going to say that he returns that 38 car for 2022.
Yeah, for Front Row Motorsports, the 34, Michael McDowell isn't going anywhere. He's explicitly said that he doesn't even want to look elsewhere. He wants to return to that team. He wants to build something and help build something at that team, which is awesome to see from a guy like Michael McDowell, who's finally, after years and years of doing the start and park stuff, of running for smaller teams, is finally in a pretty solid situation for himself. And just a reminder, even without that win, he's still top 16 in points so far this season. So they've been absolutely incredible this year. In the 38, though, Anthony Alfredo and John Hunter Nemechek, that kind of swap they did earlier this season was something that wasn't necessarily their first choice. It was also late in silly season, so they didn't have a ton of options left to go with. And so for that reason, I will say that they move on from Anthony Alfredo at the end of this year, and stepping into that car is somebody who brings a little bit more stability in terms of sponsorship, somebody who's comes from Xfinity, which is kind of the route that Front Row Motorsports has gone a lot in the past. When you look at John Hunter Nemechek coming to that team from GMS and Xfinity, when you look at Anthony Alfredo coming into that team from Xfinity, running part-time with Richard Childress, he's a little bit older than maybe some people would think, but he's had some bad luck this season, but he's had some glimpses of some solid runs. Stepping into that 38, I have Brandon Jones. I think that it's about time for him to make that step up. He's had some really, really bad luck the last, honestly, like kind of year and a half in Xfinity, but when he's been able to keep it clean, hasn't had that bad luck, has been a pretty solid driver. So he's got some of that support from Menards, a couple other sponsorships as well. And so I say that Front Row Motorsports will make the move, make the switch. Anthony Alfredo, kind of a 1-year stopgap thing, cheap driver, brings in a couple of sponsors, looks for maybe a more long-term play with Brandon Jones stepping into that 38.
I like that move. I had Brandon Jones moving up in my preseason stuff to JTG, which is actually our next team.
Okay.
But I didn't have him quite moving up to Front Row. But let's move on to JTG Daugherty Racing, a place that we have kind of a full swap potentially here for yourself, at least, with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. on the move. So I'm curious to see what you've got going on here. I believe I went first for the last one, so you can go first with JTG Daugherty Racing.
You're not going to like this one whatsoever. In the preseason, I said that 37 car is going to shut down because they're running open and just didn't make sense going into next season. Last year, we had a couple of surprises in terms of teams that ended up selling. You look at Levine Family Racing, you look at Germain Racing. I'm going to say that JTG Daugherty sells their charter and they do not run into next season. The 47 charter goes to Trackhouse. They kind of become the new JTG Daugherty for Chevrolet here in the Cup Series. So that 47 charter is sold to Trackhouse. They run the 98. I think they will still lease that charter from Spire Motorsports, which, funny enough, is formerly the 37 charter. So it's quite literally the two former charters that were JTG Daugherty. But that's the route I'm going to go down. That's also why I have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. moving on, of course, to Trackhouse as well, because I do think that if JTG Daugherty does go away, I think that's a really solid secondary fit for him there. But there's been some rumors talked about that JTG Daugherty could be looking to sell. When I look at the amount of teams looking to buy, I think it would be a good time, if they do have some questions about their future in the sport, to sell. It hurts to do so because I've loved that 37 and 47 car, especially when Chris Buescher was there. But that's the move I'm going to say. Trackhouse essentially becomes the new JTG Daugherty. They sell out of the Cup Series, moving that 47 to Trackhouse, and they do not run full-time next season.
Okay. For me, I've got two cars at JTG Daugherty Racing next season. They switch manufacturers to Toyota, though.
Okay.
They move on from Chevrolet. That's the one thing
that I did think about. Yeah.
And I have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. staying in the 47 car. I'm going to say that they keep their charter as well for that car. Then they go fully unchartered again for the 37 car.
Okay.
It's going to be Daniel Hemrick in this one, because of the switch to Toyota. That's the only rationale that I had behind moving him up, because I think there's way too many drivers going for the seats at the table in Joe Gibbs Racing equipment in the Xfinity series. I have to see Daniel Hemrick moving on. He's a guy that's so mediocre, it's crazy. And what's a more mediocre team than JTG Daugherty Racing?
He literally would be an Xfinity Series champion if it wasn't for the playoffs.
I'm not getting into this. He's a mediocre driver, and they're gonna switch to Toyota. Hence the move with Daniel Hemrick coming up there. He brings some sponsorship dollars, which is crucially needed for a team like this with Poppy Bank. So I think that's a really good fit for him and for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I didn't quite see him moving on because I don't think he quite has enough to maybe push for another seat opening. Like I think Stenhouse kind of where he is the caliber of driver that he is, to be honest. So I don't quite see him moving up the ranks to a Trackhouse team that is going to be exponentially better than JTD probably for years to come. It makes, I guess, a former Xfinity Series champion could be an appeal for a team like that. But I like the duo of Hemrick and Stenhouse, two of the guys that are very much average in their driving capabilities. And I think the switch to Toyota will make a lot of sense for them moving forward as an organization for funding wise and getting that alliance kind of thing with TRD and Toyota. And I think that would do them a lot of good.
Yeah, I think if JTG is to survive into next season, I do think it would be like a switch to Toyota, something that keeps them afloat. Some extra dollars coming in from TRD, kind of that extra pipeline to choose from in terms of drivers. And funny enough, your partnership there of Hemrick and Stenhouse are the two drivers that I was looking at for that number one at Chip Ganassi. I was thinking about, once I decided that JTG, I think, will shut down and that charter will go somewhere else. I originally had it elsewhere, but with Trackhouse saying that, I think that's a good landing spot for it. With that number one car, I thought about Stenhouse as being a solid fit in terms of just driver talents, but Hemrick kind of makes more sense in terms of the sponsorship that they need to replace there. And then so Stenhouse ended up going to Trackhouse with the announcement earlier today, which I like a lot more than him going to Chip Ganassi Racing. So that's the one that ended up switching around that I ended up liking.
All righty. Richard Petty Motorsports is the next one on the list. I don't see any change for myself here. I think Eric Jones stays in the 43 car for one more season, but they also switched to Toyota for next season, bringing Eric Jones back into the Toyota family. Of course, this is a guy that was groomed by Toyota for many, many years in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, as well as the Xfinity Series. And he's made his name in the Toyota manufacturer. So I think it would be a smart move for Richard Petty Motorsports if they want to kind of keep Eric Jones to go to Toyota. This is a team that is not afraid of switching manufacturers. They've been with Ford and now Chevrolet. I think it's time for them to maybe try out Toyota. And I think Toyota would be very smart in trying to get a guy with JTG as well as Richard Petty to open up some spots in the Cup Series for some Toyota guys that they have in their Xfinity Series program that have an outlet maybe that can go there for an opportunity once they are done kind of graduating from the Xfinity Series. So I think Eric Jones stays in that seat, our charter car for next season as well. I don't see them selling that whatsoever. So Eric Jones is the guy that I think Richard Petty wants to kind of keep there. I think it would be a bit of a rash move if they wanted to move on from him. And I don't see any other situation for Eric Jones elsewhere that would make a lot of sense for him for 2022. I don't think that's his long-term career play. He's a much better driver than that, in my opinion. But I think the cards are kind of he's just having to play with the cards that he's been dealt with right now.
Yeah, so Richard Petty Motorsports, I as well have moving over to Toyota. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. And that's partially the reason why I have the 51 charter going to 2311 Racing. They have 50% ownership, or at least a partnership of it. I don't know if they fully own it and they're kind of a partnership with Rick Ware, or if they have 50-50 or whatever it is. But that's part of the reason why I have the 51 charter going to 2311 Racing. And in the 43, I also have Eric Jones. He's an interesting one because he's one of the few drivers that kind of has their seat in their own hands because it's a driver option for him for 2022 at Richard Petty Motorsports, not a team option on the driver. So if it was a team option, I actually think that they would maybe go elsewhere and bring up one of the Toyota pipeline drivers. But with Eric Jones holding the cards in this one, I think that he'll stick around at Richard Petty Motorsports, hope for a bit of an improvement at that team, and kind of reevaluate where things are at the end of next season. But I do have Eric Jones staying with the 43 just with Toyota now.
Alrighty. Spire Motorsports, 2-car organization. Corey LaJoie very much in their future plans in the number 7 car. It is chartered. What are you thinking for the 77 car for next season?
Yeah, so Corey LaJoie absolutely staying in the number 7 car. I think he's done everything that they've wanted of him this season and more. He's up there competing with the front row car of the number 38 there in points. So I think that's basically where they could have hoped to be with their first full-time driver this season. In the second seat, they're basically full-time with Justin Haley this season. It's not officially like that, so he can still run for Xfinity Series points. The races that kind of conflict, like Sonoma and whatnot, they have somebody else go in. I don't think Justin Haley ends up at that seat. I think he ends up elsewhere in the Cup Series next season. So into that second Spire Motorsports seat is another JTG Daugherty exile. I'm going to say Ryan Preece ends up at the number 77. He's a good super speedway racer. He's showed some promise on road courses, and he comes from a short track background as well. And he's had a couple of decent runs there in the past. I think a LaJoie Preece pairing for Spire Motorsports would be a solid kind of duo of combination of experience and also some potential into the future where they can kind of build up as well with that team. I know that they were hoping to get a Ross Chastain into that team or Justin Haley. I feel like they will look to greener pastures immediately to start their Cup Series careers, as we saw with Chastain going to Chip Ganassi, as I think we'll see with Justin Haley going elsewhere next year. So Ryan Preece, solid enough driver. I think he fits in pretty well with where Spire Motorsports is basically at going into next season. So I do think that the 77 will have a full-time driver, and I'll say it ends up being Ryan Preece.
Okay. I have Corey LaJoie staying, and I have Justin Haley actually going to Spire Motorsports. I think that relationship has kind of been grooming him for quite some time. Kaulig is coming to the Cup Series next season, which kind of spices things up a little bit. I imagine that's kind of where you have him. But for me, I think Justin Haley makes a lot of sense with Spire Motorsports. I don't know if Kaulig wants to go all in on Justin Haley right out of the gate. I'm going to say that it's a non-chartered car for Justin Haley as well. I think that they're going to do something a little different there with Spire, and Justin Haley is going to have to earn his way in the Cup Series here next season, full-time with Spire, but non-chartered. So he's going to have to do some damage early on in the season to try and make the field on a consistent basis.
All righty. I do think that that's basically the next best option. If Justin Haley doesn't end up at like a Kaulig, I think he's also a low-key candidate for that Chip Ganassi ride as a Chevy prospect who has that full-time sponsorship. But we'll get to it a little bit later with Kaulig. But I think that relationship is kind of a perfect one for him going into the future. And so Ryan Preece, he was up in discussion for a bunch of different seats. I thought about putting him in that front row car, but I decided Spire was kind of a solid bet for him. Stays with Chevy, kind of a Spire team that with JTG going away in my scenario here will probably get more support from Chip Ganassi, Hendrick as well. So I thought that was probably the better play for myself.
All righty. And you mentioned Kaulig. Let's move on to Kaulig because they're one of the last ones here for the NASCAR Cup Series. And they've made it very public that they are moving up to the Cup Series next season. They're not abandoning the Xfinity Series program by any means. They're just looking to expand their operations into the Cup Series. A one-car team is what is expected for Kaulig next season. So for me, at least, there's a couple of different candidates for this one, right? Kaulig has got a bunch of different guys that they could look at for this spot. You know, Justin Haley, AJ Allmendinger, Kaz Gralla, all three of those guys, I think, are the three favorites to get this seat. Yep. This is a tough one because I kind of changed this one prior to the show. I was kind of tossing up back and forth. I have Justin Haley going to Spire, so I was tossing it up between AJ Allmendinger and Kaz Gralla for this seat. And I went with a little bit of a spicy one. I think AJ Allmendinger is happy down there the Xfinity Series. So I think he's going to stay there in the Xfinity Series with Kaulig. And I say Kaz Gralla gets the 16 car for Kaulig. They're going to be chartered. and they're going to lease it from Spire for one season, see how it goes, and they'll have Justin Haley kind of be there on the non-charter vehicle. So that's what I've gone with. I think AJ Allmendinger is probably the favorite to get this ride just based off of experience and trying to establish themselves in the Cup Series. He's done road courses for them on multiple occasions. Of course, Gralla did the Daytona 500 for the team, so there's a pre-existing relationship there. I like this move for Kaz Gralla if he can finally break through and get that Cup Series ride that he's probably deserving of based off of his one-off appearances that we've seen so far in his career. But for me, I've got Kaz Gralla there, and AJ Allmendinger, spoiler alert, is staying down the Xfinity Series with Kaulig.
Yeah, so Kaulig, I agree. I think that there's 3 drivers that they're looking at there. I would disagree that AJ Allmendinger is the clubhouse favorite. I just don't think they already had to convince him to go back full-time racing in Xfinity. I just don't think that that's something that he really wants to do in the Cup Series.
It's too much pressure.
Yeah, so I'm going to look at Justin Haley to fill that seat. And I also have him having to earn it because I think that Kaulig will run with an open charter next year. They won't get it or lease it from somebody else. And with that, I think that they will also run a part-time second car for AJ Allmendinger on super speedways and road courses as well. I think that's going to be the Cup Series thing for AJ Allmendinger. As long as he's at Kaulig, as long as they want to do that, I think that's what it's going to be, not full-time racing. I think the full-time seat will go to Justin Haley. He's been at that team in Xfinity for multiple years. He's running basically 2 full series this year, Xfinity with them, and then the Cup Series with Spire. I think he's getting that experience, and Kaulig is going to make that step up. And I think he's a solid enough driver where he makes sense stepping into that team. Kaz Gralla, I would love to see him get that Cup Series opportunity right away. I feel like he probably needs to do a full season in Xfinity to really kind of bring in somebody to go ahead and put him in a seat full time. So Justin Haley in an open ride gets the number 16 for Kaulig next season.
Yeah, I had the 16 as well, but for Kaz Gralla. So do you have anybody else in the Cup Series for next season?
I do. Do you have anyone else?
I do.
Okay, I think I know who it is, but do you want to go ahead first on this one, or?
It's Junior Motorsports.
Yep.
I think they're making their step up, man. I think Junior's had enough time to really think about this, and I just get the sense that as a team, I think it's been coming for a lot of years. This is the time to do it. The next gen car, Dale Jr. expands his kind of reach in the sport and goes to the NASCAR Cup Series with Junior Motorsports. And for me, this is just the guy
Just wait. Okay. Don't do driver yet, because I also have Junior Motorsports stepping up to the Cup Series. In years past, when Dale Jr. has been asked about it, he's basically shut it down. This year, he's opened the possibility to it. He said that if there's a time that they're going to do it, it's now. I feel like it makes a lot of sense for them. So I do think that they'll make the step up as well.
Okay. I'm curious to see who you've got as the driver, but this is the guy that there's a pre-existing relationship here, but way back when. And it's been a while since this guy has driven for Junior. And in the Xfinity Series, sometimes it's a guy that was kind of exiled here from a top organization in my predictions here. I've got Eric Almirola driving for Junior Motorsports.
Wow. Okay.
In the number 88, a car that he has driven previously with Junior Motorsports. I think it makes a lot of sense. You want an established guy, a consistent guy. He's had it, obviously, his time. He brings in a massive sponsor in Smithfield. That's huge for something like Junior, who's needing that sponsorship for a team like this. I'm going to say that they lease a charter from Live Fast Motorsports for this one as well, because that team does like nothing this entire year, basically. So I think it would be smart for them if they're just doing like a couple of races each season, lease the charter. I think Junior is going to have the ambition to try and get a charter for Eric Almirola. I think it's a guy that you can kind of build upon, wait for maybe a guy like Sam Mayer in the Xfinity Series to take that eventual ride in a couple of years' time. For me, Eric Almirola makes a lot of sense in a number that he's had success in the Xfinity Series previously with Junior Motorsports. Eric Almirola drives for Junior Motorsports in 2022.
So we both have Junior Motorsports stepping up. We both have the 88, but here's where we start to change. I think that they'll run with an open charter. I don't think that they'll commit right away to buying that charter. We've seen some people like 2311 Racing and Denny Hamlin kind of be a little bit hesitant to going all the way in and buying that second charter, as he kind of talked about earlier this season. Does it actually make sense to go ahead and do it? Just with how things break out, I originally had them getting that 47 charter from JTG Daugherty. In the end, I think that ends up going to Trackhouse with kind of the stuff we heard today. I think that they'll run open. I do think they'll go to the Cup Series, but obviously I don't have Eric Almirola there because I have him returning to the number 10.
Oh boy.
Going to the Cup Series in the number 88 for Junior Motorsports, Justin Allgaier. Full sponsorship from Brandt. He's been their guy in the Xfinity Series for multiple years. He's got full sponsorship from Brandt. They've talked about him when he's been on the Dale Jr. download as a guy who's deserving of a Cup Series ride. I feel like if Junior Motorsports is making the step up, they'll do so with one of their own guys in-house rather than looking elsewhere. And Justin Allgaier is that guy for myself. So Justin Allgaier finally gets kind of that solid Cup Series ride. We don't know obviously what it would be, or even if that's going to be a ride in the Cup Series. But the 88 number makes a lot of sense. Junior Motorsports stepping up makes a lot of sense. Justin Allgaier moving up to the Cup Series.
Yeah, it's a great pick. The only reason I didn't go with Allgaier is his previous stint in the Cup Series didn't go so smoothly there for Turner Scott. So I can't quite say that they're going to be at the top of his list. I think he's pretty content with an Xfinity Series ride, to be honest, like the schedule that comes with it and the responsibilities with it. He knows he's going to be a guy that can compete for a championship. If he goes to the Cup Series now, I think that kind of eliminates all kinds of a possibility of that situation. But if you're going to move somebody up from Junior Motorsports to take over for a Junior Motorsports Cup Series car, it's going to be Justin Allgaier from in-house. So I like that move. I went bold. I don't know. I think I'm going to be so wrong on all of these, but I don't know. We'll see, man. I think it's a really solid selection with Allgaier, but you know me, go big or go home.
Yeah.
So
is that all for the Cup Series now?
That's all I have for the Cup Series for myself. I don't have any big name. We're not going to go through what's going to drive for what number for Rick Ware next season. That's just pointless. So
James Davison.
That'll
He's
do
good,
it for
man. He's good.
That will do it for the NASCAR Cup Series Silly Season Predictions. But there's a trickle-down effect here, ladies and gentlemen, because we have the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series to get through. We won't spend as much time on these ones, but yes, we go deep into the roots of these things for the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series stuff. So let's not waste any time. Let's move on to Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. Makes a perfect segue from the Cup Series down to the Xfinity Series. 4-car organization traditionally, right? You've got a couple of guys there that have been staples there for many, many years. But I'll let you lead this one off because you do have a change over there with a guy that's moving up to the Cup Series. What do you got for Junior Motorsports?
I've got a decent amount of change, actually. So Junior Motorsports, the only one staying the same is the number 9, and that's Noah Gragson. I don't see him getting that Cup Series opportunity after this season. I think just the way that this season has gone, unless they have a miraculous turnaround the second half of the year, I don't see him being a candidate for a good enough ride that he's going to want. So kind of regroup, go into next season, hope for kind of a better situation season long. So I've got him staying in the 9. The other 3 cars, I've got changes though. The obvious one.
Really?
Yes, is the number 7. And that is because Justin Allgaier is stepping up to the Cup Series. I'm going to say Sam Mayer takes that seat there. Okay. He's going to be one of those cars full-time. I'm going to say it's that number 7 one, kind of opens it up nice. Justin Allgaier moves to the Cup Series. Sam Mayer takes his seat there, nice and fine there. The next one that I feel fairly confident about is the number 8 car, and it's kind of a half-truth saying that it's a change because I'm going to say Josh Berry ends up in that seat full-time next year. I think it's going to be a big goal of Dale Jr. to get him in one of their cars full-time next season. I think that they will get it done, and I'm going to say Josh Berry runs that full season in the number 8. And here's one of the ones that I just kind of and here's the final one that I just kind of threw something against the wall, and I'm going to see if it sticks. The number 1, Michael Annett, I'm going to say he misses the playoffs this year, and he leaves the team, stepping into that ride for the sole purpose because of one connection and one connection only, and that is iRacing. Anthony Alfredo takes that number one car with a lot of sponsorship from iRacing involved. He was previously in the Xfinity Series with Chevrolet, part-time with Richard Childress Racing. I don't see a return there. He could maybe end up at like a Richard Childress Alliance team in Kaulig, but I'm going to say he moves away from the Cup Series with Front Row Motorsports. They kind of move away from him, and he gets a second opportunity in Xfinity with Junior Motorsports. That could be a part-time thing, could be full-time. I didn't really go that deep into it, but I think Anthony Alfredo ends up with Junior Motorsports in that number one car.
Okay. I was not expecting a Michael Annett change. I got to be honest, because I have him staying put because he just gets sponsorship from Pilot, and that's about it. So, I don't have him moving on or anything like that. I have Justin Allgaier staying in the Xfinity Series in the number 7 car. I also have Josh Berry going to the 8 car for Junior Motorsports. Junior has been high on this guy for his entire career. He's finally proving that on a very consistent level this season. Yep. And they're gonna shore up some sponsorship, I'm sure, for Josh Berry for 2022. And then I have Noah Gragson moving up to the Cup Series for Chip Ganassi Racing. Stepping into the 9 car is Sam Mayer. They like to give their future prospects the number 9 car. I think Sam Mayer is a perfect fit for that number 9 car. He's one of the most promising, if not the most promising prospect in NASCAR right now. And
I think he's number 1.
I mean, a lot of people are going with Ty Gibbs, obviously, after his rise to the ranks and specifically his success this season. But we're going to see what Sam Mayer can do in a Junior Motorsports car in the second half of this season. So that'll be the real telltale sign of what's going to happen there. But for me, Sam Mayer in the 9, Josh Berry in the 8, and then Annett and Allgaier stay in their respective numbers and rides for Junior Motorsports.
Yeah, I think that's a much safer bet. But you know what?
I went safe with the Xfinity Series, I guess. I don't know.
I went bold with it with Allgaier getting the seat, then moving up in the first place. So you know what? Screw it. And I had to find a seat for Alfredo somewhere. So decided to shoehorn it a little bit with that iRacing thing.
Fair enough. I respect the connection there. I that's not even remotely on my radar, but that was well done.
It's probably not in theirs either.
Let's move on to Joe Gibbs Racing. We have a couple of guys shuffling positions there, with Daniel Hemrick moving up to the Cup Series for both of us for different organizations. But I'll lead this one off for Joe Gibbs Racing. I think it's clear as day on who they're going to fill that 18 car with. That's Ty Gibbs. He's going to take that spot in the Xfinity Series. Yeah. Shocker of all shocks. But Daniel Hemrick leaves to make way for Ty Gibbs in that Xfinity Series team. I don't have Brandon Jones moving up to the Cup Series after this season, just based off of his performances so far. Obviously been very unlucky, but I think he's an Xfinity Series caliber driver that could potentially go into one of those back marker or late 20s kind of point standing teams eventually, just not quite this season. And then I have Harrison Burton staying in the 20 car for next season. He's just not quite ready. I think maybe after next season, they try and put him in a Cup Series car, but I just need to see just a little bit more from Harrison Burton. There's no need to rush him. He's still very, very young. And he worked his way up to the Truck Series in 1 season. Now he's been there 2 seasons. I think he's going to have to stay there a 3rd in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, I think they add a 4th full-time car.
Wow.
The 54 car is going to be vacant. You know why? They've been running it because they have Ty Gibbs running that car. They're going to have him full-time, as well as Kyle Busch going for his Xfinity Series, his 100th victory in the Xfinity Series. He's going to accomplish that feat this season. He's 2 wins away, 4 starts left. No reason to run that 54 car for the Cup Series guys per se on this part-time basis. This is a full-time car now for Joe Gibbs Racing. A Toyota guy in the Truck Series right now, John Hunter Nemechek. He comes up to JGR for the single purpose of him taking the 2311 car once Kurt Busch retires. That's my pathway for his success to the Cup Series for John Hunter Nemechek. He's going to absolutely smash the competition in the Truck Series. If he doesn't win the championship, that's obviously a big disappointment for him, but he's winning races, and he says he wants to win races. There's no better seat than that 54 car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I don't see him staying in the Truck Series for another season. That doesn't quite make sense for me, at least. So you don't need to run an Xfinity Series car for Ty Gibbs or Kyle Busch to accomplish respective feats for their careers. So it makes a lot of sense for me to put the 54 car for John Hunter Nemechek. And if you want to have some Cup guys go down there in the Xfinity Series, you run the 81 car, which they have done in the past. So that's
and
my
we'll
path.
do this season.
Yeah, they will for Ty Gibbs later this season. I believe at Road America, for that one. So I think that makes a lot of sense for Joe Gibbs. And then you work with those 4 guys for 2022. I will be a massive fan of this move if they decide to make these switches. Oh my God, if Ty Gibbs and John Hunter Nemechek go battle, I think that would be absolutely insane. And Nemechek's destined to go for a Cup Series ride that's top caliber. And I think it makes a lot of sense on my end for him to move up.
Yeah, John Hunter Nemechek went back down to the Truck Series to kind of reset his career. He didn't want to do the mid to back of the pack thing in the Cup Series and try to work up his way from there. He wanted to go and kind of reset his career, go back to trucks, and prove he can win in top level equipment. And for that reason, I don't have him going back to the Cup Series right away because that 2311 seat is being filled by Kurt Busch. He wants to be in a top seat. I don't see him taking a Chip Ganassi ride. I don't see him taking kind of any of those Trackhouse kind of level rides. I think he's gunning for a legit top ride, and he does that through winning races at the lower series. He's doing that right now in the Truck Series. And if one of those seats doesn't open up, even in Xfinity or wherever, I think he is a candidate to return to the Truck Series and continue dominating until he gets that opportunity. I do think he will get that opportunity, though, in the Xfinity Series. Ty Gibbs in the 18 is the most obvious change you could possibly make. In the 19, replacing Brandon Jones is John Hunter Nemechek. In the 20 is Harrison Burton. And the 54 remains a rotation car between Toyota prospects in the Truck Series, looking at somebody like a Chandler Smith, who will be a next candidate to replace a Harrison Burton probably when he moves up to the Cup Series in the near future. Whether there's Cup Series guys that want to do races down in the Xfinity Series. If Kyle Busch does get to that number, I don't know what happens.
But more like when.
Okay, simmer down. But that's what I'm going with. I'm going to say they have 3 full-time drivers and a rotational car. 2 changes, Ty Gibbs and John Hunter Nemechek in for Daniel Hemrick and Brandon Jones.
Yeah, I mean, they've got crew chiefs there that, why sit them on the sidelines kind of thing. Like the 54 car is basically full-time already. Might as well just make it full-time and, and just
Makes
put
sense.
Nemechek in there for myself. But I like what we've got going on in the Xfinity Series right now. I'm much more confident in what we've got going on there than the Cup Series, which is understandable.
I'm not whatsoever.
Oh, interesting.
I don't feel confident at all.
I am.
You see my junior motorsports stuff? Jesus. It's not good.
Fair enough. All right. Next one on the list, Kaulig. Kaulig Racing for the Xfinity Series. What do you got moving up? You got Haley moving up, and you don't have Allmendinger moving up. So I guess you just have one change going on there. You'll leave this one off for Kaulig.
Yeah, I think this one's nice and simple. The 10's still going to be Jeb Burton. He's nice and consistent. Won a race for them at Talladega. I think he's a perfect guy to stay at Kaulig for quite a few years, actually, if they want to keep him there. 16, AJ Allmendinger, similarly. I think he keeps that seat as long as he wants it. I think the only thing that will change is the 11 car. I think Justin Haley goes Cup Racing full-time next year, so that 11 car opens up. And I've got Kaz Grala taking that seat, and he's going to go full-time for Kaulig in the Xfinity Series. There's a couple other guys that you could look at potentially, but I think Kaz Grala makes a lot of sense. If Haley's the one getting the Cup Series seat for them, I think Grala ends up in the Xfinity Series. So that's what I'm going with here. And I think Grala is a fantastic driver as well. I've been a huge fan of him for a long time. Great on super speedways, great on road courses, needs that full-time seat to kind of show what he's really got over the course of a full season. And I really hope he gets that full-time ride with Kaulig or somebody else next year. That's a pretty high-level ride because I think he's going to show what he's got.
All righty. Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I have him in the Cup Series, so I think pretty highly of Grala. For me, I only have one change at Kaulig as well with Jeb Burton. Has really surprised me in terms of how well he has performed this season. I expected good things from
consistent,
him, but I think he's a bit better than Daniel Hemrick, if I do say so myself. But the AJ Allmendinger stays in the 16 car. The 11 car, I do see a switch up. I have Justin Haley in the Cup Series as well. So they're going to have to look elsewhere in terms of the Kaulig kind of staple that they've kind of groomed over the past couple of seasons. It's a guy that we have had lots of debates on about this show. And I think it's time that he gets a higher profile ride in a top tier series. He showed where his priorities are when he switched points. It's Brett Moffitt. He takes over the 11 car for Kaulig. I think it's a perfect fit for him. Makes his way up, stays in the Chevrolet camp. There's a future for him elsewhere in the Cup Series as well. He's going to move beyond Our Motorsports, in my opinion. I think there's another driver that could be a candidate for that spot. Brett Moffitt has all the tools. He's a rookie of the year in the Cup Series, albeit a very poor rookie of the year class. But he has had very good experience throughout all ranks as a Truck Series champion. He brings a lot of knowledge to that team, a good veteran presence there, and I think he fits the entire bill to move up in the Xfinity Series rankings. And he can see a future for himself in the Cup Series because that's where he ultimately wants to be. I think he's a good candidate to fill Justin Haley's spot that's vacated.
Yeah, no, I love that pick because I had him taking that number 10 car last year. That was vacated by Ross Chastain. Of course, they ended up going with Jeb Burton for that one. A very solid pick nonetheless. But I do think Brett Moffitt is kind of that higher tier potential race winner. And I hope he does get an opportunity there at Kaulig because that would be awesome to see. I just don't quite see it. So that's what I'm going with Kaz Gralla for this one.
Richard Childress Racing, nice and simple. Mike Snyder. He stays in the 2 car. I don't see them expanding to a 2-car organization either. I think they're pretty content with him. No need to really discuss Mike Snyder. He makes a lot of sense there. Move on to Stewart-Haas Racing for the next one. Riley Herbst will move through this one. He's not going anywhere, it seems, unless you have something different. He's a guy that brings in sponsorship.
Exactly. He brings in sponsorship. They talked about him in the preseason when they brought him in as kind of guy that they liked longer term. They're not going to move on from him because of one season where he had some really bad luck in addition to some bad performances. I don't like the guy whatsoever as a prospect, but Stewart-Haas needs the money, so they'll keep him there at that team in the 98. There's no reason to move on from him because there's nobody else really coming up in the pipeline for Ford as well that would push him out of that seat either. So Riley Herbst stays in that 98.
Alrighty. We'll move on to a big team, Penske Racing. A vacated seat. Austin Cindric has been confirmed for almost a year now that he is moving up to the Cup Series for whichever team, Wood Brothers, Penske, one of those 2 teams at least. So that leaves an Xfinity Series championship ride available in this series. What do you have for Penske's Racing's number 22?
Nobody, or at least everybody. It's going to be a rotation next year. I think they'll have some of the Cup Series guys go back down. Some of the Ford prospects potentially get a couple of rides there. I don't see anybody that would make Penske go ahead and put them in the right full time. Austin Cindric was obviously that guy, given the ties that he has through his family to the team. I don't see anybody that would entice them to run anybody full time. So I think that 22 will return kind of what it was 2 years previously, where we see Logano takes some starts, Keselowski takes some starts. Cindric honestly could use some more seat time as well, so he'll get some starts. Keselowski's gone, so not Keselowski, of course. But I do think that they'll kind of go the rotation route. I don't know if they'll run the full season, if they'll run select races, but I don't see anybody really the quality or the ties enough to take that 22 seat.
I have the same thing as well. This was a seat that I really, really struggled with trying to decide, is there somebody that Penske would look at to take this spot? And I couldn't come up with a good name for it. So I've decided to go with part-time car for the Cup Series guys. And let's not forget, last season when the pandemic hit, this team almost collapsed. They didn't have the funding, and Austin Cindric could have not been the Xfinity Series champion last season due to the pandemic. They're obviously limited on funding in the Xfinity Series. They get big sponsorship from Menard, so it goes a long way for them. But I think they don't have anybody in the Ford prospect pipeline that is going to be even remotely close to taking a 22 car of that caliber. So I think they downsize. Potentially in a year or two time, they look elsewhere and they try and find somebody to take that seat full time once again. But for right now, makes no sense for Penske to fill that spot with anybody else. Last team, I guess, for the Xfinity Series, Our Motorsports. What are you thinking here?
Our Motorsports, and I will also tease that this is not my last team. For Our Motorsports, in the 02, I've got Brett Moffitt going full time. He made the switch this season. I think it's a solid ride, and I think that they might kind of continue that trajectory where they take another step and are kind of that legit playoff contender. This season, they're on the bubble. If you look at Moffitt's performance over the entire season, he's just slightly on the outside of that top 12 in terms of points. He's just behind Brandon Brown and kind of fell out of that spot after the issue he had at Mid-Ohio at the end of that race. Otherwise, he probably would still be in the top 12. I still we're not going to bring it up again. I like the move to go register for the points in trucks and try to run as many races as he could. Didn't end up working out with some of the bad luck he's had this season. So I do think that he'll run full time for our Motorsports next season in that 02. But I also have them having a full-time driver with that second seat. We saw them this season try to do stuff with an 03 with Tyler Reddick at the beginning of the season, having stuff rained out at the beginning of the year, kind of throw a wrench into their plans. We've seen a partnership with that 23 seat with kind of the SS Greenlight and Our Motorsports and Ryan Sieg and all this kind of different stuff. It's been a very weird seat with the branding of it, but whether it's the 02 the 03 or the 23, I don't know what it'll be. But I'm going bold with this one, and I'm going to say Sheldon Creed ends up in that 23 seat. I think it's time for Sheldon Creed to move up or to the Xfinity Series, whether that's part-time, whatever that is. I think he's a candidate for that Kaulig ride as well with some of their previous ties to GMS, bringing in Justin Haley to that organization. When I look at Our Motorsports, they brought in Brett Moffitt from GMS. I think they'll continue the trend and do so with Sheldon Creed. I don't think, especially with his age kind of being in that 23, 24 age range for Creed, he's that top tier prospect to where Junior Motorsports would look to bring him in, somebody like that. So I think he'll have to kind of earn his way up the grid in Xfinity. And I'll say he does so with a second seat at Our Motorsports.
Okay. For me, I've got 2 seats as well for Our Motorsports for next season. 1 full-time, 1 part-time. Okay. For the 02, I'm going with a guy that's looking for a second opportunity here. He hasn't quite had that consistent season or made the most of his opportunity so far this season. It's Ty Dillon. I see that he gets a shot here in the Xfinity Series to prove himself once again in the 02 car, vacated by Brett Moffitt, moving up to Kaulig. This is a guy that I think is okay. I don't know if he has a potential to really, maximize it at a top tier organization, but this is a guy that's looking for just a consistent ride full time. And I think this is a good opportunity for him to just kind of start from the basics and see what he's made of. Again, I don't think it's a long-term play, but if he's looking for something, on a more consistent basis, and it's a team that runs fairly decent, I think Ty Dillon will be a good candidate for this entry. Yep. And then for me, part-time in the 23 car, I have a mix of the GMS guys coming up in the Xfinity Series because it makes a lot of sense. That's Brett Moffitt's route. I think that makes sense for the likes of Sheldon Creed, potentially even Zane Smith if he wants to do something up there. I don't quite see them moving up full time necessarily next season. I would love to put Sheldon Creed up in the Xfinity Series next season. I just couldn't quite find a fit for him that I would think is worth it for him quite yet. But I think 1 more year in the Truck Series for Sheldon Creed is all he can handle. And then he's going to look at another opportunity. But I was thinking maybe you might put Michael Annett in one of these cars, but no, I wasn't 100% sure.
I did kind of do like a bigger picture one. So I'd have Michael Annett going to JD Motorsports if you did want to know where I thought he would go.
Oh, of course you did.
I'm a psycho like that. Yeah.
You have one last team. I have one last team as well for the Xfinity Series.
Really?
Yep. I have one last team, but what are you thinking for your last team for the Xfinity Series?
Well, I'm pretty sure you don't have this change at least. Okay. Moving up to the Xfinity Series in partnership with Stewart-Haas Racing, the number 38 and Todd Gilliland go to the Xfinity Series for front Row Motorsports. I think that they've done kind of what they wanted to do in the Truck Series. We've seen them take another step this season. They're currently in partnership with David Gilliland Racing in the Truck Series. I don't think that's maybe a long-term play for them. So I say that they will continue Todd Gilliland's development, move up to the Xfinity Series, and do so with 38 with some help from Stewart-Haas Racing.
I like that fit there. I like that fit a lot. I have a guy from the Truck Series as well coming up. It's a guy that's done some part-time stuff in the Xfinity Series as well. It's Hattori, and it's Austin Hill coming up to the Xfinity Series.
Interesting.
Full-time. In the 61 car for me, he's done some part-time stuff. He's dabbled in it. I think he's probably done with the Xfinity series or the truck series now. And that gives the Toyota staple with so many drivers that they have down there kind of mishmashing what their situation is. It just alleviates a little bit of tension down there for them in the truck series. I think it makes sense for Austin Hill to come up. He's done some very good things in the truck series. I think this is about as far as he kind of gets in his NASCAR career in the Xfinity series. He's going to try and prove himself a little bit in Hattori equipment there for next season. And I have him moving up in the 61 car.
Yeah, no, I like that one there. Austin Hill is a very interesting driver in terms of where his career path kind of goes as somebody entering their late 20s, kind of as an older prospect. But I do like that move. If Hattori was to move to the Xfinity series full time, I do think that would be a solid bet.
Alrighty, that'll do it for the Xfinity series. Last but not least, we have the truck series.
Yes.
How far has the trickle effect gone? Let's find out. Let's start off with GMS. You have Sheldon Creed coming up to the Xfinity series. So what do you have going on over there?
So this team, I've actually got not that many changes. 21 is still Zane Smith. 23, even though he's been awful this year and some bad luck as well. Chase Purdy, he's got that full-time sponsorship there. So unless that goes away, I don't see him going away. The 26 still Tyler Ankrum. In the 24, I'm going to hope that Rafael Lessard is able to secure that full-time sponsorship. I'll say that he ends up full-time in the 24, full-time next year. And in the number 2 truck, replacing Sheldon Creed, is one that I'm not sure you're necessarily expecting. He's a guy that does have a history with GMS Racing, even though he didn't really get to do a full-time ride there in the truck series. He ran for them in ARCA. He won a race there at Talladega. I think that he's going to end up in that number 2 truck because of the way that ThorSport has treated him this year. Grant Enfinger takes the number 2 truck at GMS Racing, goes full-time there. Is kind of a veteran guy that can stay at that team and kind of help these younger drivers out over their career. Brett Moffitt was that guy previous to this. Johnny Sauter even looking before that. Brett Moffitt has moved away. We've seen them kind of struggle, kind of overall not be that top tier team that we saw from them last year, kind of dominating everywhere. We've seen some struggles from some of the younger guys. I say that they will look to a guy like Grant Enfinger to kind of solidify themselves in that number 2 truck.
That's such a good pick. That is so good. I really like that one.
Thank you.
Damn. Why didn't I think of that? That's really good. That's really good. I'm boring, so I have GMS staying the exact same. Okay. Like literally no changes. Sheldon Creed, Zane Smith, Chase Purdy, Rafael Lessard comes back in the 24, and Tyler Ankrum is in the 26.
I like it.
I don't know. I think I think honestly there will be movement here. I just with my stupid predictions and everything that I've done so far, I couldn't quite make it work with what I wanted. Yeah. So if anybody's going to come up, it's going to be Sheldon Creed. I think Grant Enfinger is an absolutely amazing candidate to take that spot. But I hope Lessard is back, obviously, for next season full time. Purdy has been underwhelming to say the least. He's been really quite bad. Yeah, there's another word I wanted to use, but GMS, I think it's self-explanatory for myself. I couldn't quite move anybody up, so I just stayed put with them over there at the Chevrolet leading camp in the truck series. Kyle Busch Motorsports. We both have John Hunter Nemechek moving back up to the Xfinity series for Joe Gibbs Racing. What are you thinking here for, actually, I'll lead this one off. This is my team. So I've got Chandler Smith moving over to the number 4 car, because that is the number 4 truck.
Hey, come on now.
I corrected myself, but just because that is the staple truck over there, that's your championship going. You're going for the championship in that truck. It builds a little bit more. Chandler Smith has been very underwhelming to start this season in the KBM equipment, but somebody's got to fill that 4 truck, and I think it's going to be Chandler Smith. They've shown that they're not scared to change truck driver numbers for the truck series for them specifically. So I don't see an issue with that. Coming up to the number 18 truck for Kyle Busch Motorsports. As much as I would love to have somebody else, I have him moving another place, but I would love to have Christian Eckes back at this team in the number 18 truck. But I just think they've probably parted ways mutually there. So for me, I've got a guy that's in the ARCA Menard series right now coming up to take this spot. It's Corey Heim. I think he gets the 18 truck for Kyle Busch Motorsports. He's dabbled in the truck series for them at times in the 51 truck this season. I think he makes that step up. He's actually leading the ARCA Menards points right now by 1 point over Ty Gibbs. So despite Ty Gibbs winning 5 of the 7 races so far, Corey Heim has been very, very consistent down there. And I think
it's literally just the Talladega wreck for Ty Gibbs. That's the only reason he doesn't have the lead.
Yeah, exactly. But Corey Heim has been very impressive. I'll say that he gets a shot in the truck series. And that's about where the Toyota prospect pipeline kind of stops a little bit now. Like, they've had such a rush of talent. It's really starting to fizzle out a little bit now.
I would push back just a little bit on that because they do still have Jesse Love coming up from
a couple of years.
ARCA
That's
West.
what I'm saying.
He'll be a candidate for a Truck Series ride in, I think, 2 years based off of his age. He's so young. He's going to be ridiculous. But this is kind of where it pauses for a little bit. So it's not the constant rush until they sign somebody else, and then they're amazing. So
and then in the 51 truck, I've got Kyle Busch doing his 5 usual races down there. And then I see a mix of other guys. They've had just experienced guys come down there on one-offs. I have Drew Dollar making a lot of starts in the 51 truck for them next season. He's doing a couple this season. He's a young prospect in the Toyota pipeline, but I think they favor Corey Heim for obvious reasons. So I'll say Drew Dollar gets a couple of shots in the 51 truck for Kyle Busch Motorsports.
Yep, I've got very similar there. I did think about putting Grant Enfinger actually at Kyle Busch Motorsports, just given what we've heard from Kyle Busch wanting that veteran driver, talking so glowingly about John Hunter Nemechek, how much he's helped that team so far this season. I did think about going bold with it, but I went the safer route with Grant Enfinger because Corey Heim is just so darn good. He's the only one that's been in the same stratosphere as Ty Gibbs in the ARCA Menard series so far this season. Super consistent. He's had some really solid runs. I think he could step into that number 4 truck and be really solid. So I do have Heim stepping into the number 4. Don't have the numbers moving around. Chandler Smith remains in the 18, a really solid young duo there that could move up and be really, really strong drivers in the future in the Cup Series. And then the 51 rotation, as per usual, Drew Dollar will make a bunch of starts. Some of the Xfinity guys will make some starts. When you look at Kyle Busch, obviously the 5 races he'll run there. Maybe some other Toyota pipeline drivers. I don't know if Jesse Love will be old enough to make any starts, but he's a potential candidate. Parker Chase probably gets the road courses. Gracie Trotter could potentially get a start or 2 as well. So lots of different options still for that 51 truck.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to one of the last teams here, ThorSport, the last big organization we have left to discuss. You have Grant Enfinger moving on. So what are you thinking over there at the newly kind of Toyota rebranded team this season or next season?
So I've got Matt Crafton staying in the 88. I've got Ben Rhodes staying in the 99. I wanted to find somewhere for Ben Rhodes. I just couldn't really find somewhere that made a lot of sense. So I've got him staying there. Going full-time in the 98, I've got Christian Eckes with Grant Enfinger moving on. That seat opens up for him full-time there. And in the number 13, I'm going to say that Johnny Sauter moves on, whether that's retire or part-time schedule for ThorSport or whatever it is. And I will say that Ty Majeski gets that seat full-time for ThorSport, taking the number 13. He's moved into that area. He's working as an engineer for the team. We've seen him get a couple of 5th truck entries on the schedule coming up soon. So I think he's going to show really well in those. We've already seen him get a top 10 for ThorSport. I think he's going to show pretty well in those, and he'll take over for Johnny Sauter in that number 13 full-time.
Okay. For me, I've got Ben Rhodes and Matt Crafton staying in their respective numbers, 99 and 88. Like you said, I couldn't find a place for Ben Rhodes as much as I wanted to. It was really tough. I think he's a guy that could potentially be on the cusp of an Xfinity Series ride based off of his performances so far this season. I just couldn't quite find a fit that would work for him, given the talent available. Crafton's going to be in that 88 truck probably till he dies. So it makes a lot of sense for him to stay. I do have Grant Enfinger staying at ThorSport, as much as that really kind of pained me to do. I think he stays in the 98 because I think Christian Eckes moves on elsewhere. But for Grant Enfinger, I think he takes the 98 truck back full time. Then we've got the 13. I have Johnny Sauter as well moving on. He just hasn't cut it the last couple of seasons, and I think they need a fresh face over there for ThorSport to try and revamp that organization. And as much as they like to go kind of experienced, they have an older kind of veteran group. I think they're going to go young with this one. I love the Ty Majeski's shout, but I'm going to go with the guy that's in the ARCA Menard series as well. Parker Chase takes the 13 truck for me.
Okay.
Toyota team, Toyota driver in the ARCA Menard series. I think it's just too crowded over there for KBM for next season. So that's why I have Drew Dollar doing the part-time stuff. I don't think Parker Chase quite fits over there. So I think another Toyota guy is going to come over here for ThorSport and take the 13 truck and try and groom him into the next thing of that organization. So that's my ThorSport lineup.
Yeah, the Parker Chase one is very interesting to me. He's made a couple of starts with KBM on the road courses, starting to do a little bit more stuff with Venturini. It's a little bit early for me to go out and give him that full-time ride, but I do like that as a potential shout there. And Grant Enfinger, yeah, if Eckes is moving on, then he probably stays at that team, but also might feel a little bit jaded by them and look elsewhere. But yeah, I think Enfinger is a really interesting name to keep an eye on in truck silly season.
Yeah, for sure. Hattori, do you have any change here with Austin Hill? Or
no change. Nope. Austin Hill remains in the 16.
Okay, so for me, this is the team where I think Christian Eckes ends up. I think he moves on from ThorSport. He gets a full-time ride secured. It's a Toyota team still, has a lot of potential. All eyes are on him there. It's his sole kind of team. It's all about Christian Eckes. I think the world of this kid. I think he's going to be something really great. He just hasn't quite had the opportunity. Got thrown out of KBM for, I think, a little bit too rash of a decision, in my opinion. As much as I would love for him to go back to KBM next season, I don't quite think that's a possibility. I absolutely agree that he could be in line for that 98 truck for next season. If Grant Enfinger does move on, it's probably the most likely situation out of all of this. But Christian Eckes, I think, fits what Hattori kind of needs. A guy that's looking for a second chance. Austin Hill was looking for that second chance. Christian Eckes is still looking for that. He's done well in his part-time stuff for ThorSport this season. Yeah, exactly. So I think Christian Eckes fits the bill there for what they want. A younger guy than what they've traditionally gone to, but he has a lot of potential that is just waiting to be realized. So I have him over than the 16.
Yeah, I like that move as well. Obviously, Toyota team that has looked to older drivers, not necessarily been like a pipeline team, but if it makes sense and Eckes doesn't get that full-time ride at ThorSport, that could potentially be one if they do look to expand or go full-time in Xfinity. So I do like that kind of play there.
Last two for me, at least. I don't know how many you have left, but I've got front row staying. I've got Todd Gilliland staying in the truck series for one more season. And then I think they kind of look at what you've done for next season or for 2023. I think it's just a little bit too rushed, despite him getting a win in the truck series this season. Just one more year, I think would be do good for Todd Gilliland's long-term career. And then the last one I have is David Gilliland Racing. But what do you have?
Yep. So Front Row Motorsports not running a truck program for myself. They're moving up to Xfinity.
Yeah.
And what happens for myself is they return basically the equipment to David Gilliland Racing. Tanner Gray remains there. Haley Deegan remains there. And the 17 truck, instead of being the part-time rotation, it is full-time rotation in preparation for when Taylor Gray is old enough to run that truck.
Okay. So for David Gilliland Racing, I have the same thing in terms of not adding a third truck, but I've got Haley Deegan and Tanner Gray staying in their respective rides. But yeah, that kind of does it, I guess.
That's all of them, I think. You want to do ARCA Silly Season?
No, I'm too stressed out already as it is. Oh my God. Like, I think you've got a really solid foundation of what you have, but I'm not confident whatsoever in my picks. As long as I can get more than one right this time around, that'll be good enough for me.
What I'll say is I feel pretty good about Cup Series. I feel really good about my Truck Series, and I have like 3% faith in my Xfinity Series. So that's basically how it breaks down for me.
I don't have any confidence basically in anything that I've done. So I don't know. As per usual, I'm probably going to be wrong on the predicting side of things.
We'll have to see how it all plays out this time.
We'll have to revisit this probably once everything's kind of settled down. Maybe even in 2022, we'll have to revisit these predictions.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll definitely keep you updated on any more news and whatnot in silly season. It's going to come thick and fast over the summer months, as it usually does. We have lots of movement around in all three series, so anticipate a lot of news potentially over the summer months. But any final thoughts before we wrap up our mid-season silly season predictions for 2022, Kyle?
Yeah, just a really fun time. I love doing this stuff. I basically, like, every week I like look at the silly season stuff again and think about like who could go where and blah blah blah. So it feels good to finally have it set in stone. My predictions for the year feel pretty decent about it, but there's a lot of different big dominoes that could potentially fall in different directions. So really interested to see what happens in terms of the charters, who ends up going where, what new teams we get in the Cup Series. There's a lot of different fascinating things to watch for in silly season that could really spice things up.
Alrighty, I think that'll do it for today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We would really, really appreciate it. We just hit 100 subscribers, so thank you all so much for your support. We really, really appreciate it, and we'll definitely keep the content coming as the season goes along. We have another episode coming out later this week to preview the All-Star race and any more news and notes, so make sure you come back to the channel for that, for what is expected to be an absolutely terrible All-Star race at Texas Motor Speedway, but we'll still preview it nonetheless. So a quieter week in terms of NASCAR news and previewing stuff. So this is the perfect time to do our silly season stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We will talk to you in a couple of days' time to get you set up for the All-Star race weekend. Talk to you later, everybody.